Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing good. You all are safe and healthy at your home. Well, I'm Mrs. Sutima Vashistha, and today we are meeting for the social science history class. So this is the next part of the chapter French Revolution, and today's topic that we'll be dealing with in today's class we'll be talking about how slavery was abolished in France, and then we will also look into what everyday life looked like in France after the revolution. Alright, the revolution and the everyday life of the people in France. What happened there after that? And then the chapter comes in the end with this. We will be having a concluding topic on the chapter. So from the today's class, your learning objectives will be, you will basically acquire knowledge about how slavery was abolished in France, and also you will get to know about, you will have the understanding about the everyday life of the people in France, the revolution, and how the people in France live their life there. So let's get into the chapter. Yeah. So the abolition of slavery. We all know that slavery was very much prevalent in a certain point of time. Right? There was bonded labor, right? People were sold. Yeah, human trade was there. People were sold in the name of slavery, right? So let's see how this slavery came to an end. One of the most revolutionary social reforms of the Jacobin regime was the abolition of slavery, and slavery was abolished during the rule of the Jacobin government. All right, that means when the Jacobin clubs, you remember, Robespierre ruled. So during the rule of the Jacobin government, slavery was abolished in the French colonies. Colonies in Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint Domingo were important suppliers of commodities such as tobacco, sugar, indigo, and coffee. So what happened? There were these colonies in Caribbean colonies, all right, in the Caribbean Sea. So these were these island countries, the Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint Domingo. So these were these Caribbean countries, colonies, and there what happened in those places, it was there was a lot of indigo plantation, sugar production, tobacco production was very much in those areas. That means in Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint Domingo. But European people were not willing to go and work there because of this. It was too far. No, it was because of a distant location, and also people were unfamiliar with the lands. All right. So that is why, as the Europeans were not willing to work there, so there was a lack of labor. There was dearth of labor to work in those plantations. So that means there was a triangular slave trade. All right, because as there was shortage of labor, so this led to the trade of human beings, or the trade of slave between Europe, Africa, and the America. So this was this triangular slave trade that took place between Europe, Africa, and America, because there was lack of laborers to work in those plantations. The slave trade, it basically began in the 17th century. All right. So French merchants sailed from the ports of Bordeaux or Nantes to the African coast. So you just need to remember the names here. So basically the French merchants, what did they do? They sailed all the way from the ports of Bordeaux to the African coast, where they bought slaves from local chieftains. All right. So from the local people, they went to the French merchants or the traders. They basically sailed from Nantes or Bordeaux to the African coast, and from there they brought slaves, all right, from the local people there, local chieftains there. Then branded and shackled, the slaves were packed tightly into ships. So it was basically, they were transported through ships, and many people were brought together. And when they were brought, they were basically shackled with each other. They were tied up, all right. And too many people were occupied in one small room. It was like totally, there was no humanity left at that time, all right. People were, because they just wanted slaves, they went and treated people in this way, all right. On the ships were not totally full of people. There were no, like in one room only, they will be packed up of people who were brought as slaves. They will be shackled, they will be tied up, all right. So there was totally exploitation of slave, alright, of people. Then when they were like, the journey will also be like not for 1 or 2 days, it will be like 3 months long journey, 4 months long journey, and they had to come in that way, in a shackle, then tied up, compact in one tiny room. The exploitation of slave labor made it possible to meet the growing demand of European markets. So once there was supply of slave, there means there was supply of laborers. So when there was laborer, then there was very much production of tobacco, coffee, indigo. There was production was more. So port cities like Bordeaux and Nantes owned the economic. So these places like Bordeaux and Nantes, they were growing to be, they were flourishing because because there was economic prosperity. Now they had more of all these productions because after the slaves were brought, after the laborers were brought. So throughout the 18th century, nobody actually in France talked about abolishing slavery. Why? Because they had their own secret selfish reasons. Let's look into that. So when National Assembly was formed, they did not talk about the rights that should be extended. They had long debates about whether the right should be extended to all French people or not, including those in the colonies. All right. So when the National Assembly was formed, you can remember voting right was not given to everyone. All right. So it was only limited to one section of the population. So always there was discussion and debate going on whether voting right should be given to all the people, including those people in the colonies. But they did not pass any such law. Voting rights was not given to anyone. Why? Because the National Assembly feared that if they stopped slavery, or if all the people were given voting rights, then definitely it will be a loss for the business people already, and there will be a loss of income if they try to abolish slavery. All right. So that is why they also did not talk about abolishing slavery, because they feared that the business people or the rich people will oppose against them, and also that there might be a economic loss. All right. So it was finally the convention. I think you remember after the National Assembly, there was this convention that was formed, right? So when by the Jacobins government. So when the Jacobins government formed the convention, then they they made new laws to free all the slaves. All right. In the French overseas possession. So everywhere, wherever slaves were, any such kind of human trade was going on, slavery was going on. When convention came to power, when Jacobins government was there, they abolished there. But that was not, however, but that did not last for a long term, because this was just for a very short term. This law worked out for just 10 years. And after 10 years, what happened when Napoleon Bonaparte came? You remember after Directory, then was abolished, and came Napoleon Bonaparte. So when Napoleon Bonaparte came, he again reintroduced slavery. All right. So plantation owners understood that their freedom, as including the right to enslave in pursuit of their economic understood their freedom as including the right to enslave African Negroes in pursuit of their economic interests. So after Napoleon Bonaparte ruled, then again slavery was reintroduced, and those plantation owners also, they again understood that African people, those Negroes could be brought as slaves again. But finally, this also did not last long, because in French colonies, slavery was totally abolished in the year 1848. So this is how slavery came to an end in France. Now let's look into what was the revolution and the everyday life. What happened? How did life look like after 1789, or when the revolution was going on? So the years following 1789, people in France saw many changes. All right. So after the years of 1789, many changes were seen in the lives of men, women, and children. So what were the changes? Let's see. The revolutionary government took it upon themselves to pass laws that would translate the ideals of liberty and equality. So the revolutionary government, or the government that was who was fighting, they took it upon to, they passed laws that would talk about equality and liberty, all right, into everyday practice. They brought liberty and equality into everyday practice. One important law that came into effect after the storming of the Bastille, so you can remember when Bastille was attacked, one important law that came into effect after the demolition of Bastille, that is in the summer of 1781, was the abolition of censorship. Now, what is censorship? Or like, you know, as we know, that during Louis XVI, like, you know, nobody could, people did not have any freedom of expression or speech. They could not say anything against the government. So if anything they will say, that will be suppressed. So censorship means from the now there will be press. The press can publish anything. People could raise their voice. Every opinions will be taken. Earlier, what happened? Only those news were published what is according to the government. So the if anything is against the government, those news were not published. So now that censorship was abolished. Now there will be there was the abolition of censorship. So now there was in the old regime, all written material and cultural activities like books, newspaper could be published. Now books could be published, papers, pamphlets, anything could be published by the without taking any permission from anyone. Earlier, what happened during the rule of Louis XVI? There will be a censor. Censor means who will see whether this news can be published or not. So all these kind of rules were abolished. So there was abolition of censorship. So now the Declaration of Rights of the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen proclaimed freedom of speech. Now there was, after the revolution, then there was freedom of speech and expression. So it became the natural right. People were given right of speech and expression. The newspaper, pamphlets, books, printed pictures. So now, as there was no censorship, there was too many of printing of books, papers, then pamphlets. All this got flooded in the market. All right. From where they traveled rapidly into countryside, and when censorship was abolished, there was more of publications. So people not only from the cities but in the countryside, from the village people also, it reached them. They could read the news now, what was going on. They could raise their voice. They could give their opinions. All right. They all describe and discuss the events and changes that taking place in France. So these are the many changes. People got freedom of speech and expression. Now they could express themselves. People could talk to each other. Many changes came about in that way. So freedom of the press also meant opposing views of events. So when freedom of press was there, that means now also you can speak against the government. It's not that you only have to accept whatever is said by the government. So now people could talk against the government. So each side sought to convince others of its position through the medium of print. So people started to write. Words have a very strong impact. So people started to write more and more. So this was the only way grasp and identify with ideas. So when people started to write more, people read about it more, people started to talk about it more. So there was so the ideas of liberty, justice, all these, people got more educated and they could achieve it. All right. But however, only even though press was, even many things were written, press was there, but only the educated people could read those, right? The uneducated could not read the papers or whatever was written there. Yeah. So that was all the changes that took place in France after 1789. All right. So we know that after the revolution, many changes came out. There was abolition of censorship. Then the revolutionary government, they constantly talked about equality and fraternity, and people now started to write more and more. Lot of they could now speak against the government. All right. So people were expressing their views through dramas, by writing songs, through plays. All right. So this was so now people could talk about it more. People could read about it more. So these were the basic everyday life of the people in France. These were the changes that took place. So let's move to the last part, the concluding chapter, the concluding part of this chapter. So in 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte, he declared himself as the Emperor of France. I think you remember after the Directory, there was clashes. It was Napoleon Bonaparte who took the power. So he declared himself as the Emperor of France. After declaring himself as the emperor of France, he went about to, to conquer the neighboring European countries, all right, dispossessing dynasties, and he started to conquer neighboring countries. He created his own kingdoms, all right, and his own kingdoms, he kept his own family members, all right, no other people were there, only his, like, whatever he wanted, he just benefited himself and his family. Then Napoleon saw his role as a modernizer of Europe. So he considered himself as a, that he is a modernizer for Europe. So he introduced many laws like protection of private property and a uniform system of weights. So when Napoleon became the ruler, he declared himself as the emperor of France. These were a certain laws that were introduced by him, like the introduction of weights and measures. Like now people have to use proper weights, while in the market and all proper weights and measures has to be there. He introduced a protection of private property. Then also, initially many people saw him as a liberator who could bring freedom for the people, but soon Napoleonic armies viewed everywhere as an invading force. Initially, when Napoleon became the emperor, people actually liked him. Alright, people saw that already he will actually bring some changes for Europe. Alright, for France, he will work for the people. He saw the people of initially many people actually saw him as a liberator, somebody who will give them freedom. But slowly they saw that no, Napoleon and his armies were actually trying to invade, we're trying to make their laws forceful. All right. So finally, there was a war that took place between the troop of Napoleon Bonaparte and there was another seventh coalition party. That was the war which came to be known as the War of Waterloo, which took place in 1815 between the troop of one side. It was the first French Empire, and on the other part there was the troops of Seventh Coalition. In the troops of Seventh Coalition, many countries were there, like Prussia, Austria, Switzerland, then UK, Netherlands. All these countries were on one side, and Napoleon and the French front, which was led by Napoleon, that was on another side, and that was the War of Waterloo in 1815. So many of his measures that carried the revolutionary ideas of liberty and modern laws had an impact on people after Napoleon had left. So you can remember Napoleon actually, he initially talked about liberty and fraternity. So his ideas were also got spread to other parts of the country, all right, of Europe, other parts of Europe. So the ideas of liberty and democratic rights are the most. So when we talk of French Revolution, in the beginning of the chapter, I have already said the ideas of liberty and democratic rights were very much central to the French Revolution. It all came from the French Revolution. So from France, it started to spread to the other parts of the countries also, other parts of the world also. Like for India, Tipu Sultan and Raja Ram Mohan Roy are two examples of individuals who responded to the ideas coming from revolutionary. I think from it also had a great impact on India. Indians, I think, in our consideration also, if you can see the idea of equality and fraternity, it was taken from the French Constitution from France. So we have also we have a lot of things to learn from the French Revolution. In fact, the entire world have taken the ideas of equality, liberty, and fraternity from the from France or the French Revolution. So with this, the chapter comes to an end. I hope you are able to. It's the French Revolution. You have got a very clear picture about French Revolution and the different events that have taken place in the course of French Revolution, and also you got to know about how it came to an end and what was the life of people life of the people in France during the time of the revolution. So with this, students, the chapter French Revolution comes to an end. I hope this class was useful for you and you are taking back home a lot of informative things. Thank you. Take care, everyone, and we shall meet in the next class.